What's going on, world? It's Ricky Runnit, half of the duo Retro Roundtable TV. As you can see, I have my Back to the Future headphones on, so you know it's going to be an important occasion. And to be quite honest with you guys, I wasn't really too sure how I was going to put together this video, so I took a little bit of time and thought about it, and I came to the conclusion that I'm just going to effortlessly string it together last minute like everything else in life. So just like my co-host Ace Master J, we pretty much build our content off of 90s culture. Because, you know, we're 90s kids, well, 90s men now. Well, we're having a little complications, being kind of conflicted, coming up with segments to do alongside with the podcast. If you haven't checked it out, hint, hint, check it out. We already uploaded 2 episodes. We're 2 episodes deep, but we need more subscribers. So hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to see what we're up to. So for these little side segments that we're thinking about doing, it's been kind of conflicting just thinking of ideas. So one of the ideas that I had, I'm a big Nick guy myself, a big Nickelodeon guy. So I'm going to talk about some of the NickToons and make some videos about NickToons that were my personal favorites. And it was kind of hard to decide which one I wanted to do first, because I've been looking online on YouTube and I see all these cartoon reviewers reviewing shows like Rocket Power, As Told by Ginger, you know, stuff like that. But nobody has really talked about Jimmy Neutron. So with that being said, without further ado, I bring to you guys the Adventures of Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. The video.
3, 2, 1.
Gotta blast.
So before I really dive deep into this video, let me explain to you guys to the extent of how lazy I am. So off a spur of the moment type deal, I actually named this video Gotta Blast because it's Jimmy Neutron's catchphrase, as we all know. But let me tell you, I'm actually gonna name this whole entire segment where I do content on NickToons Gotta Blast, because it can mean 2 things. First off, of course, everybody knows it's Jimmy's catchphrase. But secondly, it can also refer to a blast from the past. Now, as corny as that sounds, you guys have to admit that that's creative. Now, give me a break. This is really technically my first video like this. So, you know, I'm gonna come up with a whole bunch of different ideas on the spot, and I expect y'all to roll with it. I'm not a genius like Jimmy is, so y'all gonna have to work with me. Bear with me, okay? Okay? All right, so let me stop wasting y'all's time, and we are gonna get into the video and talk about what made Jimmy Neutron great and what made it not so great, but mainly great. Let's get it.
Wow, it's better than a poster.
Gentlemen, this will be a night we shan't easily forget.
I don't know what shan't means, but let's go!
So for those of you who didn't grow up watching Nickelodeon or Nicktoons in the 90s or early 2000s era, The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius is exactly, literally just that. He's a kid and he's a genius. It's not really rocket science. Hey, you get it? Rocket science? Okay, moving on. So the reason why I refer to the series title in its entirety is because I don't want you guys, like myself, to get confused with the 2001 film Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, which came out December 21st, 2001. Why they gave the series and the movie 2 different names, I have no idea. I'm not really sure how the copyright and patent system works in Hollywood, but I'm pretty sure that was part of the reason. I figured, you know, it's Jimmy Neutron either way, so it's whatever. I refer to the show as Jimmy Neutron and the movie as well. And I'm not going to go too deep into the movie, but I will tell you guys, the film was released in theaters December 21st, 2001. And I remember, because me being a kid myself and all hyped and jacked up off of candy and soda, I was super hype about it. Now think about this. I'm a kid, 11 years old, just like all my friends. And you know, it comes out around the time where, you know, we're going through our adolescent phase and we're trying to figure out how to understand parents and why we have to do chores, why we have to do this and that, get fussed at for this, screamed at for that, and have to get good grades because we don't see the point of school. Well, maybe you guys weren't as dumb as me. I didn't really see the point of school back then. And just seeing the previews on TV of a movie about pretty much all parents disappearing, vanishing off the face of the earth out of nowhere in a moment's notice, you goddamn right I was on board for that. I was waiting for that bad boy to hit the theater because it's like something you can relate to, and that's one thing I really loved about Nick, because back then you can relate to it as a kid so much. Like everything, even some of the commercials, they just grasp you in because we were their target audience. Their target audience were kids 6 to 13, I'm assuming. Even though I did still watch Nickelodeon far past 13, but that's besides the point. And I know I'm treading a little off topic here, but just to give you guys an idea of how old I am, the Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius movie was released on VHS. Yes, I said VHS. That thing that you put into a machine called a VCR, which I'm pretty sure most of your grandparents have right now, and DVD on July 2nd, 2002. Now let that sink in. Let me let that sink in for a minute. Good God, I'm getting old. Lord, I'm getting old. But anyway, let's get back on the show. So I guess the movie was so well received by kids and adults alike that Nickelodeon wanted to pick up Jimmy Neutron as an actual series. So it began July 20th, 2002, and it aired for 3 whole seasons until November 25th of 2006. Now, it's not the longest running series ever, but that's pretty impressive for an animated series if you don't include shows like The Simpsons, South Park, and Family Guy, especially for Nickelodeon, because outside of SpongeBob, not a lot of NickToons lasted long, despite them being precious gems. So the show was created by a guy named John A. Davis, and it was under the genre of comedy and sci-fi, which I can kind of see because of the style of animation that it is, and the fact that most of the episodes deal with aliens, like the movie did. But yeah, it's kind of weird that it's under the sci-fi category because not a lot of Nick shows had that element to it, so it's kind of weird. But going back to the animation style, I think that's one thing that stood out to me the most out of all of it. I wouldn't say it made the show more realistic like a live action show, but it was kind of a breath of fresh air, especially at that age, seeing a different type of animation style than what, I was pretty much used to. Something different than the Fairly Odd Parents and the Looney Tunes and the Ed, Edd n Eddies. Despite those being very great shows, it was nice to see that there's some type of originality in the cartoon world. Now, if I had to use an adjective to describe it, to kind of dumb it down a little bit of how the animation style is, I would have to say bulgy?
Hey, why is everything so bulgy? Ah, who cares?
So Jimmy Neutron is a 10-year-old boy genius who I'm assuming is in the 5th grade, maybe the 4th, but my instinct is telling me the 5th. He lives in the town of Retroville, which in retrospect is just like any other animated town or city that's based upon a kid his age. Kinda like Timmy Turner with Dimsdale, but the name Retroville puts me in the mindset of Townsville for the Powerpuff Girls. Now Jimmy deals with this overwhelming reality of the fact that he's actually smarter than everybody in the dim-witted town where he lives. Now, his parents are good-hearted, but throughout the series, they do display acts of stupidity, especially his dad. His dad, Hugh Neutron, is really obsessed with ducks for whatever reason. They never really get into the reason during the show. And his mom's, one of the typical kind-hearted moms you would see in a show like this. Now, he has 2 best friends, just like every other kid, Sheen Estevez and Carl Weezer. Now, Sheen is arguably one of the comic reliefs of the show. Now, I know everyone in the show is meant to have their own brand of humor, but Sheen brings something extra to the table, whether it's him being eccentric, clueless, or his strange worship of this He-Man-like dog named Ultralord. So I really don't know who Ultralord is supposed to depict in the series, but Sheen worships this dog, or hero, wherever he's supposed to be. Kind of puts me in the mind of Batman a little bit. Now, Jimmy's other best friend, Carl Weezer, he has one of the strangest obsessions that I've seen in animation history. This boy is obsessed with llamas. And even some episodes, it's kind of been proven that he has sort of like, I don't want to say a sexual tension when it comes to llamas, because that sounds really weird and borderline bestiality. And that's a little too much pressure for a Nick show. But the thing that I love about Jimmy Neutron is it takes a different approach than what you would expect. It follows a different formula than what Cartoon Network's Dexter's Laboratory follows. Because as you know, if you watch the show, Dexter is also a boy genius, but he keeps his laboratory a secret. Whereas on Jimmy Neutron, his parents know. I don't know if they knew from the get-go or they just embrace their son's IQ or whatever it is, but it always made more sense to me. Like, why would you hide your gifts from your parents? maybe Dexter was making inventions to take over the world. But that's neither here nor there, so I'll talk about that on another video. Now, when Carl and Sheen aren't being guinea pigs for one of Jimmy's experiments in his lab, you can usually catch them outside or at their normal hangout spot, the candy bar. And the candy bar is like one of those places where, you know, the animators have to think of somewhere where the people can hang out. Like, you know, Doug had the honker burger with him and his friends, you know, Peter and his gang, they had the clam. So that's what I like about this show. I like that they named it the Candy Bar because it really shows that they're trying to grab the attention of kids, and that's their primary audience. Because it's kind of like a play on words. It's like a bar, but for a kid, so what better name than the Candy Bar? But the downfall with Jimmy is, even though his heart's in the right place, I think he's a little too inquisitive and wants to experiment too much. It's a good thing to have a high IQ, but what you do with that IQ is pretty much like one of those, I don't know how to use my powers for good type things, because every episode is usually about them having to fix an issue that Jimmy started in the first place. Either he's trying to showboat or beat his competition, or he's just trying to do something to take like the easy way out, trying to make shortcuts by using his brain, but doesn't use his common sense, if that makes sense. Like, for instance, one of the very first episodes of The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron is called When Pants Attack, and the episode is pretty much about Jimmy gets scolded and gets in trouble because he refuses to put away his pants and leaves them all on the floor. So instead of just picking them up like a normal child, he decides to create an invention where he gives his pants artificial intelligence so they can hang themselves up. And of course that backfires and they end up taking over the city, or however that went. But it was such a crazy concept because all he had to do was fold and hang up his pants, but instead he goes to the extreme to actually create an invention for something so simple. Now you tell me, if you were a kid his age and you could make an invention like that, would you do that and take the easy? Matter of fact, to me, that's not even the easy way out. Think about the time and the effort you have to put into making pants get up themselves and fold and hang themselves. That's it. To me, he kind of overdid that, because that's putting so much effort into something. That's like putting 30, 40 countless hours into an experiment that where you could have put like folded your clothes and just like put those up in a matter of a half an hour. Maybe you're kind of overthinking it. Yeah, I'm overthinking it. But my point is, the boy is smart as all outdoors, but lazy as all indoors. Kind of reminds me of myself. I'm proud. But I don't want to spend too much time talking about the three obvious main characters. I want to talk about some of the side and recurring characters as well. Some of them that are my favorites. So we have Cindy Vortex up first, and I could never really make out her character at first. She kind of rubbed me in two different ways. On one side, I did like how she carried herself as like not really a bully, but sort of like a superior. So she knew Jimmy was smart, she knows he's a genius, but she doesn't let that intimidate her. And I don't want it to be like a battle of the sexes type thing, but she seemed like she was really for women empowerment at 10 years old. How ridiculous that sounds. Now with Cindy, it's more like a Helga Pataki type thing from Hey Arnold. She always taunts and teases Jimmy, but deep down inside, she has a thing for him. It may not be displayed like it was in Hey Arnold with Helga, but you can kind of tell it has like these undertones where you can kind of, it kind of hints off at the fact that she's crushing on Jimmy big time and vice versa, that he's actually crushing on her. But through the series, they're like the biggest competitors. It's kind of like Dexter and Mandark if Mandark was a female with blonde hair. Now, can you really hear Cindy hitting the ha ha ha, ha 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 ha? Bro, I'm weak. I swear to God, that laugh always had me dead. And that man got a big old bobblehead too. Oh, come to think about it, Jimmy has a really big head. And look at this man's hairline. It is pushed all the way back. It looked like some fondue dip on the top of his head too. Good Lord, this man's hairline is on vacation, I'm telling you, man. His hairline came with a sign that said back in 15. His hairline disappeared in one of those Where's Waldo books. His hairline is like some of y'all's daddies. It ain't never coming back. And then we have Cindy's best friend, Libby Folfax. Now, Libby is one of those characters who I could say is my favorite character, but not because she's black, it's because she actually brings something different to the table than the rest of the characters in the series. So, like I mentioned, Libby is African American, and she also has like this whole hip-hop style about her. And she also appears to be Sheen's love interest, which is really heavily suggested. Not even heavily suggested, it's actually put out there boldly. So you can't say the interracial relationships that just became a thing in this generation, because it's been going on for a while apparently. Sheen said he wanted to taste brown sugar for the first time. And he doesn't mean in his oatmeal. Now, all jokes aside, Libby is actually really cool. Now, I never thought in the history of NickToons I'd never see a Nickelodeon show reference Master P. So there was this one scene where she was asked what she was listening to. She had like a Sony Walkman on, and she said, "Oh, I'm just listening to this new album by Master P." And I was like, the fact that he even got addressed in Jimmy Neutron is like a milestone in itself. I don't know if it was just me, but I was geeking for that scene. Not saying I am or I ever was a big fan of Master P, but you gotta admit, that's pretty dope. Now, as far as Master P's music go, he has some pretty questionable lyrics, especially when I had mentioned bestiality earlier, talking about Carl Weezer with his llamas. I think Master P may have taken a page out the Carl Weezer handbook. Now listen to this lyric and tell me I'm lying.
Don't tease ya. I'm in a bed with a bow-legged beaver.
Now, why is this grown man in a bed with a beaver? And more important, why is the beaver bow-legged? What happened, P? You couldn't find no straight walking beavers at the dam? Okay, anyway, back to what I was talking about earlier. So Libby is a lot more chill and a lot less, I don't want to say goal driven, but she takes life a little easier than Cindy does, despite them being best friends. And I like that because just like Jimmy with Sheen and Carl, they're two totally different people when it comes to intellect and when it comes to studies and everything. Cindy seems to strive for excellence and just be this goody-goody two-shoes towards the teacher, towards her parents, etc., and make Jimmy out to look like he's an idiot because of his failed attempts of experiments. But Libby is really cool and laid back. She cuts Jimmy a lot of slack, and that's something that you can kind of see throughout the series. Through the first couple seasons, Libby is like all girl power, just like Cindy. She still empowers, you know, her girls and everything, but she cuts all the boys a lot of slack. And then we have Nick Dean. Now, Nick Dean is like the more modern Fonzie from Happy Days. Now, Nick is like the standard cool guy that all the girls go crazy and drool over. Now, he has this 80s swag about him. He has this black leather jacket, which personally, even back when I was a kid, I thought was played out, but to each his own. Now, Cindy has a huge crush on him. Despite having like underlying feelings for Jimmy, she's more expressive when it comes to feelings about Nick, because I feel like since more girls kind of gravitate towards Nick, she'll feel like less of an outcast if she also has a crush on him and she thinks she can win him over with not just her beauty but also her brains. Now, with not a lot of girls, at least to my knowledge, that like Jimmy, yeah, I could see where Cindy was coming from, but Nick is like the guy that you could kind of see as a bully in some cases, especially with the guys. Like the way he treated Carl and Sheen and even Jimmy sometimes, it was like, it was hard to even think this dude was cool, because like at this point you're already connected with the characters. You're already connected and attached to Jimmy. You're kind of attached to Carl in this weird way. You're attached to Sheen. So when you see him treat them like dirt, it's like you don't want this dude to win. You want him to take an L and knock him down a couple pegs, because he thinks he's this cool guy that can always be Rico Suave. But at the end of the day, I feel like if Jimmy really put his like efforts into it, he could pull more girls than Nick. Now, come to think about it, I think that's why he has that 80s swag, because the city is called Retroville and the candy bar is like a 50s style diner, now that I'm thinking about it. So it kind of all ties into each other. But moving on, we have another character named Bobby. I can't really pronounce his last name, so I'm not even gonna attempt to butcher it. I want to say it's Stroganovsky. Like Stroganoff, yeah, it's Stroganovsky. So Bobby, he kind of reminds me, he puts me in the mind of Rolf from Ed, Edd and Eddy. But the difference is Rolf was actually my favorite character from Ed, Edd and Eddy. Hence, it's my favorite show, hint, hint. But Bobby, he's funny. He had his funny moments, and he makes slight appearances in the show. Maybe if he would have appeared more in the show, I would have gained more of a liking towards him, but as of now, he's not really one of my favorites, and not even one that I want to get too deep in the depths with. And I'm glad that dog just barked in the background, because it reminded me of one of the main characters that kind of gets overlooked because he doesn't necessarily have any speaking roles, and that's Jimmy's pet dog, well, pet robotic dog, Goddard. Now, Goddard, I don't know why Jimmy didn't actually get a real pet, but I can understand the enthusiasm. I can understand the interest of having a robotic dog, because every time Jimmy is having a problem or he's suffering a downfall due to his own inventions, he always turns to Goddard for answers. Kind of similar to how Courage the Cowardly Dog did with his computer. So every time Jimmy needed suggestions on what to do in a particular situation, he would always turn to Goddard, and then Goddard would have a monitor with a list of suggestions that Jimmy could go with, sort of like a B, C, D type multiple choice type deal. And that was pretty cool. And this is a formula that Nick doesn't tend to follow often, because you don't see a lot of main characters, especially adolescent boys, with pets as companions. The last thing I remember is Doug and Porkchop. I guess you can count Timmy Turner and his two goldfish, but they're actually his fairly godparents, so yeah, I don't know how that resonates. But it always tends to remind you that this is a kid's show, because they enjoy so many things that we enjoyed as kids, like how we love Slurpees and slushies so much. They had something similar called Purple Flurp, which was like a purple drink. I promise it wasn't lean, but it looked delicious. It was kind of like when you see a Jawbreaker on Ed, Edd and Eddy, and they're all oversized, and even with the Canker Burgers, and they looked all delicious. You just want to like take a sip of that Purple Flirt. And the aesthetic of the show emphasizes kid-friendly, even with some of its more adult humor. And then speaking of adults, you have Hugh Neutron and you have Judy Neutron, Jimmy's mother and father. So Judy Neutron kind of plays like I don't want to say a background character, but she doesn't stand out too much. She's like your typical mother, punishes Jimmy when she has to, but shows him plenty of love. Hugh Neutron is more like the guy, the cool parent, pretty much just like the chill parent. Doesn't show too many disciplinary strengths, but he's also obsessed with ducks. So what can you expect with a man who's obsessed with ducks? But he was actually one of my favorite characters, and I found him as the funniest because though he had that weird obsession, I found him the most relatable. But the character who I must put emphasis on, who is my favorite character, and I feel like she gets overlooked, but Miss Fowl, the teacher of Jimmy's class, has to be the funniest character in this whole series through the whole 3 seasons it ran. Without Miss Fowl, I don't even know if this show would have that same feeling, because Mrs. Fowl, not Mrs. Fowl, Miss Fowl, she's not married, and if you watch the show and you heard her speak, you would know exactly why. It's like mid-sentence, she blurts out this random bird squawk. Jimmy, did you do your homework? Just like that. I swear to God, that's really how she talks. I wish I could do a better impression. I probably just made a fool out of myself, but matter of fact, let me just play a little clip.
How do clouds create rain, Carl?
Well, when the clouds get very sad, they cry.
No, Carl, Jimmy! Water vapor condenses on a particle called a condensation nucleus. Got a blast. Very good, Jimmy.
I told y'all she sound like a whole vulture out here. Now this is where my laziness kicks in, and I'm not gonna lie, it's getting kind of late. I'm trying to put together this video in one day, so y'all gotta bear with me like I said earlier. And this is just like a little character overview, so I want to call this Got a Blast Episode 1 Part 1. And I'll continue with Part 2, and that will be pretty much just like a summary of some of my favorite episodes of The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron, so you guys can get an idea of where my humor is or where my humor was, because I haven't watched the show in a while. Even though, heads up, it is available on Hulu, and I'm pretty sure Paramount Plus as well, haven't really checked. But once again, this is Ricky Runnit, one half of the Duo Retro Roundtable. Shout out to Ace Master J. Y'all take it easy, you already know. Oh my goodness, I had no idea these videos took so much time and effort to make. It is literally dark outside right now. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in and bearing with me through this first episode of Got a Blast. This is only part 1, like I said earlier, so on part 2, I'll be discussing some of my favorite episodes from the series, seasons 1 through 3, And then maybe I'll do a part 3 discussing Jimmy Timmy Power Hour, parts 1 through 3. If you guys are into that, just let me know. If you have any suggestions on what shows or movies I should cover next, leave it in the comment section. Like I said, like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, all that good stuff. I'm signing out. Ricky Runnit, you already know.